little introductory period here to talk about what we're currently doing, and I really do mean brief. First of all, if you would look back to the gentleman at the door, we are holding a fundraiser with some fantastic t-shirts. They're $20 and that buys your membership and you can be a young Democrat of Hall County. Woo! Can I get a little bit more enthusiasm? Yeah! Yeah! Anyway, thank you. I tried, thanks. So yeah, we are selling t-shirts. They help us do really cool things in the community. Some of the cool things that we're doing in the community right now are with our political outreach committee. We work with the Hall County Dems. We kind of partner on that committee. And Elizabeth, who is our treasurer, say hello. Our political director is really sick right now, and I didn't want him to come. No one needs to see that. His name's Arturo, and he's a boss. He does things. And right now, we are currently trying to really get into the issue of the gentrification in Gainesville. There's been a lot of things going on the square. There's a lot of things going on with them cleaning up shoddy housing, which really means that they are kicking some of the people who can't afford the housing out, renovating it so that they can't afford to go back in, and there's nowhere for them to go in the interim. So it's like saying, hey, poor people, you gotta go. There's a lot more in depth, and it's a big issue in Gainesville, and it's something that's not really talked about, and that is just poor form. But no, it's a big issue in Gainesville, and it's not often talked about, and I'm really proud of our committee for trying to tackle it. We're also trying to address some Latino outreach issues in the form of a bill called 287G that allows, again, I'm grossly simplifying it for the sake of time, but in Hall County, our sheriff's department participates in 287G, and I'm sure you guys know what ICE agents are, right? So they are allowed to hold someone indefinitely if they believe that that person is an illegal immigrant. And one of our friends who is helping us spearhead this was held for a very long time, and he was completely legal and completely supposed to be here. And it's a bad issue, and it's really kind of hurting parts of our community. And those two things are really important to us and things we're trying to tackle. So those are things that I would invite you to come out and help us do. This is our work. What keeps us alive as an organization is things like the fundraising. Nick Mitchell, please stand up. Hi, that's Nick Mitchell. Nick Mitchell is our communications director, and they're currently trying to do a video, a format of something. They want a series of YouTube, and they want to kind of get people in the community to explain why they are liberals, why they're a Democrat, because there's a big stigma. So we're trying to tackle that project right now. Our fundraising is going well. We exist. That's very cool. We have membership activities that we're trying to, spearhead a little bit. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to hold socials in different, a lot of restaurants are progressive leaning but afraid to show their stripes. So when we get a restaurant that supports us, we try to have membership meetings there so that we can support them too. So we try to do a lot of good things in the community, and we try to, our number one goal is to support candidates like Josh McCall. So I'm really proud of where we have come. There are a lot more people. It is July. Most of our members are vacationing right now, which is awesome for them. But no, we have much more attendance now, which is great because last year we had all these great local candidates, and we just didn't have anyone to do the canvassing or phone calls and all these things that are necessary to get elected in Georgia as a Democrat. So without too much further ado, I want to invite Josh up on the stage so he can talk about what he's doing. And I really want to encourage you guys to get out and help him because he needs it. And I'm super, I don't know, I'm a pretty dull guy. I don't get excited easy. No, that's a joke. I'm super excited to get this guy elected, a lot. Where's Jennifer, his wife? You should be afraid. No, but seriously, please welcome Josh McCall. Come on up.
Thank you guys for coming out tonight. I do realize that there's a pretty large contingent of people who actually had to be here tonight. Thank you to the journalism students who are here tonight. I know some of you may not have signed up for coming to hear a Democratic candidate speak, but I hope I'll make it worth your while, and I hope that what you hear from me are things that you may not have heard from other Democratic candidates. So I hope that maybe your visit tonight will be worthwhile. Thank you to the Young Democrats for having me, and thank you to Packy McGibbon for doing the technology. All of you guys are great allies. And anybody in here who may be on the other side of the aisle, I also want to tell you that I welcome you tonight, because I've been trying to reach across the aisle since I announced my candidacy. I've been sending messages to local Tea Party groups to try to see if they could let me come and talk to them, but I have not had any success yet. But I have had a lot of Democrats come out to support me, and so there are plenty of you in the room tonight, so I'm going to talk to you and to the journalism students. And I'm going to only speak for 10 to 15 minutes, tops. And after that, I encourage you to ask any questions you have. I hope people challenge me. I am not a professional politician by any stretch of the imagination. My very first political meeting took place in February. I have never, ever been in politics before, except for reading it on the news. That was the only, and of course voting. That was the extent of my my political history until this past cycle. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about why I came out of my private life. I have a very satisfying, very fulfilling private life. I love my wife. We're best friends. We hang out. We talk a lot. When she gets off work, she calls me, and when I get off work, I call her. My kids are awesome. I love talking to them and hanging out with them and laughing with them. And I like to read. I'm a nerd. I like to read everything I can get my hands on. I like to learn languages. I teach Greek and Latin. I actually teach Latin, but my master's was in Greek and Latin. So that's what I enjoy doing. And normally, I have been pretty satisfied with living that life. And to tell you the truth, if Kasich had been elected this past year, I would probably be at home right now, hanging out with my family or reading. But he wasn't. And there were some unsettling tendencies in our political discourse over several years that were disturbing to me, but I'd always hoped that they would stay somewhere on the edges. But they didn't. And in fact, if you think about it, it was only a matter of time before it came to a head, and some political figure full of charisma with name recognition came to the fore who was willing to capitalize on those feelings of hatred and fear and division. And that is why I came out of private life. I felt a moral imperative to come forth to try to not just battle one person, because I don't think that all the problems in America stem from one man, Donald Trump. I believe that there is a much, much larger problem in America today. You will hear me tonight talk a lot more about my ideas than you will hear me talk about Republican ideas, because I believe that's the way forward in this country. It would be so much better if politicians would come before us in the public to offer two plans, and we could choose from those two plans which one we like, instead of attacking groups of people who are the most vulnerable in this country. That's my plan going forward. That would be a great way to fix politics in America, and I want you to hold me accountable for doing that tonight. That doesn't mean that I won't criticize my opponent, because this is politics. But when I do criticize him or Donald Trump, as an American and as a Christian, I don't believe I'm supposed to judge anybody on a personal level. That doesn't mean that I can't look at a policy and say that's dangerous, unwise, or unfair. So, without further ado, the problems that I saw coming to the fore in America arise mainly from one problem. We have come to recognize and to count and calculate the price of everything in this country without recognizing the human cost of anything. You can now get a quote on your life. Now, it depends on what is threatening your life. That's what the price depends on. If you need an EpiPen, The price on your life depends on who is running the company, the corporation. The stockholders who are gathering profit are looking at one thing from their corporation, which owns this key to life. They're looking at their own profit margins, not next year or next decade, but next month. If the thing that is threatening your life is cancer, the price on your life is even higher. If the thing threatening your life is a dangerous pregnancy, there are some states where you will have to travel hundreds of miles to see a doctor and make decisions about your own body. The price of everything in this country has been calculated. We believe that it's too expensive to give students a decent education now without living the rest of their lives in debt serfdom. We believe that is just too costly. We believe that it is too expensive to save people's lives. But whenever the question comes for more bombs or more ships to invade more countries and make our footprint on the earth even larger, the price is never asked. But if you look deeply enough beyond the headlines, we actually know the price of our war on terror. The most obvious cost is safety. The more countries we invade, the less safe we have become. The more countries we occupy and rebuild, the more terrorist attacks happen all across the world, from Europe to our own shores. And beyond the human cost of our war on terror, there is the monetary cost. $6 trillion is what we have been willing to spend on a war on terror, which has no phone number, no flag, and no location. In fact, if you begin to look at our war on terror, which is both dangerous and expensive, dangerous to us at home and dangerous to our troops who come back scarred forever, mentally and physically sometimes, again, when we pay that price, when we look at that cost, we never ask, how much is it going to cost to rehabilitate our citizens who are willing to serve their country? And when they come back, we repossess their homes. We put them through a healthcare system that is inefficient and heartless and mindless. The cost is never calculated, but the price on their lives is calculated. The price comes from the price of oil. I believe that we don't have to pretend in this room full of educated people that we don't invade every country full of terrorists. If we did that, we would be invading about 2/3 of the world. We only seem to invade countries with large oil reserves. We provide security and a constant stream of revenue for oil companies, which are now inhabiting our White House. We are not even pretending anymore to be separate from the corporations that our government represents. Rex Tillerson was said in a headline a few weeks ago to have, quote, taken a break from his official duties to receive an award from the oil industry. But I would propose to you today that he didn't have to take a break, that the business of the White House and of the Congress are now identical to the business of ExxonMobil and directly in opposition to the interests of every human being sitting in this room who breathes air and who requires safety and security and prosperity. We know the price of everything and the human cost of nothing. But I believe something different. I believe that what makes us human makes us equal. I don't care if I don't have a mansion. I don't care if I don't have a BMW. But I care, and you care, and everybody in this country cares if our heart will be beating tomorrow. If we can live the next week without mental anguish or pain that can be prevented with healthcare access. That is a human reality, which makes all of us equal. A little story from 2003. This was the year when America has decided to fully invest themselves in a war across the globe against a force that has no flag and no home and no capital, called terrorism. Back then, George W. Bush made a requirement for the new Iraqi system. It was a strange requirement because it's not one that we have here at home. He required that any healthcare system set up in Iraq be universal, that every citizen in Iraq could come and get health care guaranteed as a right. While here at home, the people paying for that did not enjoy that same right. Also in 2003, a man who was very different from me, Senator Mitch McCall, across the aisle from me, had a diagnosis that he got from an in-house physician paid for by you and me. The in-house physician that lives on Capitol Hill, which you and I provide to every politician in Congress today trying to deprive people of health care, told Mitch McConnell, you should go get a checkup. It's time for a stress test. At your age, it is dangerous not to be checked up on. Senator McConnell said, I feel great. I've never felt better. Nothing's wrong. But the in-house physician said, no, you better go. And you can still find interviews with Senator McConnell today, sharing his gratitude for the physician who saved his life. Because when he went for his checkup, which many people who pay Senator McConnell's salary cannot afford, he found that he required a triple bypass surgery. And I am sure that in that moment, when Senator McConnell first heard, you have serious blockages in your heart, and you need a triple bypass operation to save your life. I'm sure that in that moment, he felt the same way you or I would have felt. We would have all wanted to save our lives, to see our loved ones the next day. Unfortunately, Senator McConnell could do so, and many of the people he represents cannot. But I believe that it is wrong to have a system like this. I don't believe that anybody should die because they're poor. And I believe that nobody should be poor because they're dying. I'm fundamentally different from Senator McConnell. Not only do I want to make sure that Senator McConnell has access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I want every American to enjoy the same benefit. This is a fundamental right. This is not a luxury. This is not a mansion or a car or a phone. It is something that helps us live. And if you don't have life, it's really hard to pursue liberty or happiness. That is one of the central planks of my platform. If I could accomplish nothing else in Congress, I would want my legacy and the people supporting me to have a legacy of delivering healthcare access to every single American. Access that would not only be just as good as our congressmen and our presidents, but access that would not break them, that would not leave them destitute after they were healed. Another thing that I think that we have to focus on is making sure that every working person in America has a living. People who invest their entire day in work are giving more than their hours or their skills. They are actually giving their waking hours and hours of their existence they will never have back. That is the trade that every company makes when they hire a new employee. We will work you for your whole day, and then at the end of the day, you should be able to live. But right now, many people are giving those hours of their waking life and still finding themselves unable to pay for food, clothing, and shelter. So another plank of my platform is to push for a livable wage for everybody. And I realize, before I close, there are a lot of questions I haven't answered, but I do want to close on this. I do recognize that many of these advances will cost. I do recognize that raising the minimum wage is difficult, especially for small businesses. That's why I want to form an alliance with small business owners, real small business owners, people who have holdings of less than $10 million, and ask them, what can we do with the tax code to reward people who hire Americans with a living wage, to make sure that you can actually stay afloat when we change this policy. I'm even willing to go to Wall Street, who, by the way, owes us for their very existence right now, and find the money there. Because if you want to know where our jobs have gone, if you want to know where the property in this country has gone, it went straight to the people who drove the economy into the ditch in 2008. What they did in 2008 was gamble with other people's money. And then because of their actions, from London to New York, people working in factories across this country, doing the right thing, waking up in the morning, going to work, and saving their money, lost everything they had. And all they had to do was go to their government and their representatives and ask them to write a check to bail them out. And when they did so, people like Doug Collins and people in his party, and unfortunately, people in my party, asked them, how much do you need? I wish they would pay as much attention to the people in wheelchairs coming into the Capitol, begging to have their lives saved and to keep their medical funding safe. I wish they cared about those people that they are, even now, having carted out, wheeled out, and carried out by force, as much as they did about those corporations, who, by the way, do not have heartbeats, or family members, or flesh, or blood. Corporations, at this stage in our history, which are a legal fiction and which we need to make our country run, are more important than people with flesh and blood and minds and hearts and souls. I want to go to Congress and change that. I have not been offered any money by corporations, and as you can tell from my speech, I probably will not be offered any money by corporations. I'm hoping that none of them will even try. If they do come to my doorstep and offer me money, I want to pray for a while before I talk to them, because I'm afraid I might use foul language, and I don't believe in doing that towards people. But I believe that people are the most important thing in this country, and that any nation is not made up of its money or its gold, but of its people. And those people should be first. Money is only there for people. Corporations are only there for people. And our government should only be there for the good of the Republic. Thank you for listening to me tonight. I'm willing to take questions on specifics for my policy, and since I'm a new politician, if you ask me a question I don't know, I will just tell you I don't know, but I will get back to you on it. I've thought about this a lot though, and I hope that you'll have specific questions, and I hope that you'll have policy questions, and I hope some of you who have come here tonight who may be from a different background from me, who may not consider yourself on the left or a progressive, I hope that you will ask me challenging questions that challenge my assumptions and my premises. And I hope that, by the way, finally, when we leave here tonight, we can all walk away knowing that everybody in this room wants what's best for our country. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing your questions. Yes, Brad.
Israel and Palestine, what's your position?
Israel and Palestine. So part of pulling back from our empire would require that we not give so much assistance to people who are not making our world safer or serving our interests. We do not serve Israel. This is my country. My representatives represent me, not their country. And as a matter of fact, when it comes down to it, what happens between the Palestinians and Israel and between Iran and Israel is really their business. I would not want to personally shed my blood for either Israel or Palestine or Iran. For that same reason, I don't think that we should have troops in Syria right now. I don't want to shed my blood for Bashar al-Assad, but that's what we're doing right now with troops on the ground in Syria. If it came down to it, and we were attacked by a foreign enemy, I would sign up, and I would gladly die for my country, I hope, in that moment of truth. But I don't want to send other people to die in a battle that I would not want to die in. And so, why not do something radical? And I know this is going to be revolutionary for me to say this, why not prioritize our problems over other countries' problems? By the way, Israel has a universal healthcare system that guarantees healthcare access to every one of its citizens. And we fund their system with money and with weapons that they then go and sell. So I think that we should take that money that we use to support other countries, no matter who they are, and actually spend it on our own people. I know this should not sound revolutionary. This is where we are in our history.
Right.
This should sound like common sense, that we take our money from our republic and we spend it on our public interest. But here we are, 2017. It's going to sound revolutionary, and I'll probably get some really dramatic feedback online. But I'm looking forward to it. We need to have those debates. Yes?
So the money that you would, so like to fund the system of having universal health care,
Yes.
is that where you would get your money from? Or do you have other plans of where you get the money from as well to fund that?
Great question, thank you. We are actually spending so much, the question was, where would I get the money to fund the healthcare system? Is that fair? The problem is that we actually are spending more per person on healthcare right now because we don't have universal healthcare access than other countries that do. The reason that we're spending twice as much money on healthcare now as a country like Germany or Britain is because in America, if you have a pain in your chest, odds are, by the way, the middle class is the minority now. The middle class American dream is 2 years away, and we're quickly driving away from it very fast, and it's only getting worse. Odds are, if you have a chest pain in America, when your first thought is not, I need to survive, your first thought is probably, how can I afford this? And you may put that off. Now, if you had gone earlier, you could have been treated at much more cheaply. But we have laws in this nation that you can't turn anybody away from the emergency room. So our healthcare system goes through a bottleneck at the most expensive possible place you could put it through. That's one place where we could save money. We would actually spend, and this is how insane our system is. If we went to single payer, a lot of people think that sounds like more money. We would actually save $500 billion. Now, some of my proposals will cost something extra from companies, like a $15 minimum wage would definitely cost stockholders for Walmart, no doubt about it. But this central plank of my idea would actually save us money and save us lives. The reason we haven't done it already is because the #1 spending lobby in this country is healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and private healthcare insurance. California almost passed a single-payer system as a state. Guess who redoubled their efforts and doubled their money? It was the private healthcare insurers in California, and that stopped it. They stopped it dead on the floor. So we would actually spend less money on healthcare. Where would we put? We would be wondering what to do with all the money we would save. And I would love for you guys to research this and fact check it. And please get in touch with me if these facts are off at all. But we spend more money because we don't have a universal healthcare system on Medicaid, Medicare, pharmaceutical companies because they get to name their own prices. You know, I really wish as a teacher I could name my own price. And I'm sure my father, who was a machinist, had to work every hour and got paid by the hour. I'm sure he wished he could name his own price. One of the only industries in this entire world sits right here in America, and they can name their own price. And the government just basically says how high. So we would actually save money. The cost of a single-payer system would be 2.2% for each person working. And that 2.2%, by the way, would look a lot more from a billionaire or a trillionaire. There's no trillionaire. From a millionaire or billionaire than it would for a person making minimum wage. But nonetheless, that would be how much we would have to pay in as each as a person, because it would recognize that we begin our lives in a hospital. Almost all of us do. And almost all of us will end our lives in a hospital. And in between, all of us should be going to get vaccinations. And this is not a private concern. This is a public concern. For every person who is sick, they can't get to work. If you have diabetic neuropathy and you don't have the insurance or the money to pay for it, you cannot work with diabetic neuropathy. If you have a bipolar disorder, if you're a manic depressive, you cannot go to work while you're having an episode. And most of our people in prison right now, by the way, suffer from a severe mental illness. And one of the things that this would address, not only would it save us money, but it would bring some measure of equality to a system where people who are white tend to get better treatment than people who are not white. A lot of people who are African American, if they have a mental illness, they get put straight in jail. A lot of white people who have a mental illness, have you noticed the headlines every time a white person shoots up a place? Troubled teen, gifted young man shoots up a place, right? I believe that delivering health care to every American as a right would help address some of the fundamental inequalities in our system. So, I'm sorry I went on for so long. I have a lot to say on this subject, but we would actually save money. 2.2% for each individual worker and 6.7% for every employer, and that would actually be less than what the employers are paying right now, because right now employers pay an average of $12,500 in shared premiums for each worker. So there would be a lot of money saved. Yes?
Could you explain the difference between single payer, like how does single payer work?
Right. So the reason that it's called single payer, and my name for this system is, it's the same thing, it's just a different name. I think it's a more persuasive name, but it's the same thing. The American Health Insurance Plan. Because it would be patriotic. What is more patriotic than spending money on a system that would save American lives? It's a health insurance plan. The problem with private health insurance is that in South Georgia, there's not a great pool. And private insurance companies don't have to be there. We are always at their mercy. But in an American health insurance system, where everybody in America, from New York to California to Georgia, pays in 2.2%, people in California and New York who have a higher per capita income could help in that pool. It's an insurance pool. If you have private insurance right now, you are paying for someone who's older than you. In healthcare, we are always paying for other people. That's one of the things that bring us together. We don't recognize it in our country, in our system, but healthcare actually brings us together. And every time you go to the emergency room or the doctor, you are not just paying for yourself. You are paying for yourself and for other people who could not pay. So the single payer system is a publicly financed, privately owned system. So in other words, we would all be putting into this pool, the American Health Insurance Plan. You take your card, which you would get if you have a Social Security card and proof of citizenship, to a local hospital of your choosing. There's no such thing as being out of network. And you let them swipe your card, and the way they do it in France, they get it back within a month. Here in the US, doctors' offices usually wait 90 days to get their payment, if they get it from the insurance companies. So it's publicly financed, but the people who are making money are the only people who should be making money off healthcare. Healthcare providers. I know, once again, history has left common sense behind a long time ago, but it seems like common sense to me that we should be able to take our money straight to a doctor and let that money go to doctors and nurses instead of going through a robber baron system where they can charge you whatever they want to charge you because they've already bribed Washington. So that's how the single payer system works. Not only that, it will also allow the government to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies. Instead of pharmaceutical companies naming the price of the EpiPen simply to make more profit that quarter because people need it to live and they're going to pay the money if they can find it. Instead of that, we have a panel of pharmacists and physicians who get together and say, you should make some profit. You invested all this money and effort into your medicine, your discovery. You should make plenty of profit, but you can't name your price. So that's how single payer system would work. It is not, it's not socialized medicine, because if it was socialized medicine, the government would come in and take over the local hospitals and doctors' offices. This is simply, it would save our healthcare system actually. Costs are still skyrocketing, even under Obamacare. They're going to rise every year, and if they repeal Obamacare, which they're threatening to try to do, they would go up exponentially more. I'll try to keep my answers shorter now. It's a complex system, and I don't want to give incomplete answers. Yes?
So I know the person you're running against doesn't believe that humans contribute to climate change. So I want to see, as a professor of weather and climate here, what your view is on that. And since we just had the hottest year on record last year,
yeah,
iceberg the size of Delaware break off in the winter in Antarctica, how you would propose addressing that?
Well, there's a reason why Representative Collins and other people in Congress don't believe humans contribute to climate change. That's because humans contribute to congressmen. And these humans who contribute to them have a lot of money to give, which is given to them, by the way, by us. ExxonMobil could not survive for one day without our Army. And so they didn't have the money to go and pay congressmen to get elected and invest in them. And so, again, another place that I will probably not be seeing any campaign contributions is from the energy industry, from the oil industry. To address climate change, we've got to make sure that people realize this is the next great opportunity for our future. After the Great Depression, the US pulled together and we rescued capitalism. Capitalism was dead. National Socialism was alive over in Europe, but the banks were absolutely paralyzed. And so what this would do would be to catch up on what we still owe the American people from 2008. In 2008, the banks said, can we have some help? We said, how much do you need? But the people who were dispossessed of their homes, that includes veterans, the elderly, the people who lost their pensions, they got a raw deal. And the banks have left us far behind. We always think, we put it in quotes, the economy. The economy is terrible. Well, if you look down at people like us, the economy isn't great. And especially for people who are in college. When I was in college, it was a different outlook. But with all of you competing for low-paying jobs, I can't imagine how stressful it would be. And I think that we owe every person in the wealthiest country in the history of the world a decent living. We can find those decent livings locally with green energy. Every community investing in solar panels, just like the TVA project brought new technology and new job opportunities to this area. There's people in my family who are still working today who would not be working if it hadn't been for the government helping to fund and innovate on electricity in this area. If we did that for green technology, it would add jobs, it would help our economy, it would boost our taxable income, it would do so much for us, but most importantly, so we have a responsibility to ourselves, to tell the truth. We have a responsibility to our children to provide them with jobs, like working on solar panels and wind turbines. We also have a responsibility to our grandchildren to inhabit a livable world. It is only our responsibility. And so I think that we should invest boldly and aggressively in green energy. 70.38% of the American people, by the way, believe that that's the way to go. I also believe that we should invest in high-speed rails for every major city in the country. It would reduce greenhouse emissions, and it would provide jobs. And for people, we know that a lot of the jobs are moving to the city. High-speed rails from Los Angeles, from to the suburbs, from Atlanta to the suburbs, like this, would put people out here in contact with higher-paying jobs. And you could still live in your local community, and we would cut down on greenhouse emissions, and we could create plants right here in Gainesville or where I'm from in Stevens County, building the rails, building the cars, building the technology that actually makes those high-speed rails. So we need to invest aggressively. This is an opportunity. This is not a threat to America. Climate change is the greatest opportunity. And finally, I want to close on this. You guys can ask all the questions you want, but I know I'm going a long time. I'm not a professional politician. I think we're supposed to have like a 5-minute or 2-minute response time, but I'm a teacher, so I'll answer fully. One of the most important reasons we need to invest in green energy is international terrorism. The reason we are not safe, the reason we have people attacking us from overseas, and the reason our politics are completely distorted because of those attacks is because of oil. The oil companies need their security. Again, they would not survive one day if they had to provide their own security. In Iraq, what the oil companies did to our troops should have been punished. There should have been jail time. There were contractors in Iraq who were paying soldiers to drive empty trucks because they had a contract for every mile, but they were running out of fuel. So there were soldiers who died in Iraq guarding empty trucks. We have all of that money to throw away on the oil companies and the big contractors who rebuild the rubble of the Middle East. Why not bring that money and bring those people home? Yes?
You've mentioned several times the corruption in government and the lobbyists and the money, and we all know this is a problem. Wouldn't the solution be public funding of elections?
Yes, it would be, and I would love to have that. We have to have a few steps to get there first. And this is an idea, and I would love for you, journalism students, to look this up to see if anybody else has proposed this. The first step we have to get through is to address PACs, political action committees. According to our Supreme Court, which was bought with the best judges money could buy, they ruled that money equals speech and that corporations are people. This is going to go down in 100 years the way people used to look at the Dred Scott case. The idea that corporations are people is ludicrous and absurd. And the very Supreme Court justices who are always talking about being originalists, Antonin Scalia, he was the one who made that bogus ruling that corporations are people, which I find nowhere in the Constitution as a literal reading. And money as speech. How absurd. If I speak to a policeman, if he stops me for speeding, I can say almost anything I want to say. Have a good day, why are you stopping me? But if I offer him money, I'm going to jail. But the Supreme Court made a ruling that you can hand money to a politician, ruling on health care, ruling on the military, and they get away scot-free. So the first step to doing that would be to use something that's already in the Constitution. It will be perfectly legal. We should tax PACs at 75%. That would cripple the PAC industry. It would be perfectly constitutional and legal because in the Constitution it gives Congress the ability to levy taxes. I think corporations would have second thoughts about throwing $100 at a candidate if they're only going to see 25 of that. So not only that, it's a fundamental injustice. Corporations say we don't have money to pay a living wage. We don't have money to invest in schools. We got to hide our money overseas. But suddenly when election season comes, they find their money. They found it was under the mattress. And they find that money and they pour it into people's pockets. And speaking of naming the price of everything and the cost of nothing, I found out what it costs to buy Doug Collins' vote. It's about $40,000. This is not an exaggeration. He has recently come out in support of ending net neutrality so that private companies could charge you a higher speed or slow down the speed, charge you a higher rate or slow down the speed of their competitors for a website that you happen to want to visit, which is illegal right now against regulations. He wants to end that. That cost $42,000 from the telecommunications industry. This is all public information. We know the price of a Doug Collins vote. And unfortunately, there are several Democrats who also have a price on their votes. But I believe that we've got to reform it by beginning to elect people who are not taking money from corporations. And the first step, though, is by ending the cash wars. If they want to pay money to their politicians, they should do it the Democratic way, pay it into the government, and I would devote that 75% tax to building rural hospitals and working on local technology to deliver better health care to rural areas. Yes?
Although it hasn't really affected the Ninth as much as South Georgia, do you have any plans on dealing with the opioid epidemic?
This will be part of universal health care. We have got to stop criminalizing drug addiction. I'm all for criminalizing drug dealers who bring heroin, cocaine, and even the ones who deal marijuana illegally, because it can be dangerous if you don't know the source. But I don't believe that we should put people in jail for smoking or for doing something that doesn't hurt anybody else. I believe that, for one thing, again, we say that we can't afford health care. We have the biggest prison population in the world. We have a larger prison population than China. And most of the people in the prison population are there because of mental health or lack of access to mental health care. And a great many of them are people of color who are put there without as fair of a shake as somebody who looks like me would get from the justice system. So decriminalizing and retroactively decriminalizing drug use, I would keep on the books laws against the drug trade. That would save us money. It would also let people addicted to opioids, give them a chance to go to the hospital. Because people on drugs like this often want to get help, but they're afraid of going to get help because they will get arrested. It's a shame that we're talking about it this way now, and we weren't talking about it back when crack cocaine hit the urban areas, African-American populations of people of color. I wish we had done something like this then, but unfortunately we waited until it hit the white suburbs. Now there are people in the suburbs suffering from opioid overdoses, and now we're suddenly concerned about it. So we can't go back and change history, but maybe we can try to make it more just now. Yes?
So you were speaking of marijuana, and it raised the question for me that as of right now, marijuana is considered on the same level as heroin. And I just want to ask, like, in your opinion, where do you stand on legalization of marijuana in Georgia?
I'm for,
Decriminalization.
yes, I'm for legalizing medical marijuana. And this might look like going, in a system where you have universal healthcare access, going to your doctor, and like they do in California or in Washington State, you can grow your own plant. Why be forced to go through the pharmaceutical industry to get a plant? Marijuana helps a lot of people. There are babies who have seizures because, and marijuana is one of the only things that can help them. There are plenty of people with Crohn's disease who would be helped greatly with medical marijuana. And if people have a prescription from their doctor who knows the effects of marijuana, and if that doctor has said you can take marijuana safely, who is the government to step between that person and their own body and their doctor and tell them, no, you can't do this with your own body? So medical marijuana, I think, after consultation with a physician, I do believe that there should be some form of limit, because in a developing brain, there has been some research to suggest that children who are young, especially males whose brains are still developing, it can be impeded with marijuana. And I believe that they should get advice from a doctor. It's always a good idea to get advice and a prescription from a doctor. But under this system, anybody who has a need for marijuana could have access to it through a doctor's prescription. That's my position.
So I had a few questions regarding your knowledge and stance of immigration policy.
Mm-hmm.
First of which, just since the YD policy director, Arturo, isn't here, I figured I should ask for him.
Mm-hmm.
What the extent of your knowledge as well as your stance is on 287G,
Mm-hmm.
and if you have knowledge of stance or stance on it, also the DACA policy.
Right. Very good. So the 287G would be a state level policy, I believe, and the DACA policy is a national policy. These are small but very significant to people's lives. Many people don't know what 287G means, but to some people 287G means staying with your family or being separated from them. I believe that in an advanced country like our own, with advanced technology, and with a great educational system, that there is no reason why we can't form a humane, economically smart immigration reform. We have got to address this. You see, if we can fight against 287G, and we should, because local officials they know what they're doing, and they know about their own communities. But that's just a little tiny ripple in the overall ocean of immigration reform. We have got to pass laws about immigration that recognize human rights. The Constitution is not correct or right because it was written on paper. The Constitution is right because it recognizes human freedom, human liberty, and human dignity as a right, because everybody is equal. So I believe that we should give people who have been here, they have broken the code to some extent, although I don't think they should be in jail. And if I get a speeding ticket, I haven't hurt anybody, I'm trying to get to work, I pay a fine. I believe that people who have been here illegally should be given the opportunity to pay a fine. I would set it somewhere where it would make the government some money and help pay for programs to help patriate them if necessary, if they're refugees. But we can set it between $2,000 and $5,000. And from talking to someone who has family members who are still undocumented, according to him, he said there would be people waiting in lines for that opportunity. If we just gave them the same, because we need to compromise. There are plenty of people in America, and these are people I would represent as well, who feel upset that people have broken the law. Now, I believe those laws are unjust, and that they shouldn't have been made in the first place. But I do believe that giving them a chance to pay a fine and to get on a pathway to citizenship within 5 years is the only smart way to go. It would save us money, and it would be humane. It would do all the right things, but we've got to do it legislatively. We've got to actually go long term. As long as those laws are in place, we'll keep waiting for a Barack Obama to scale down the enforcement of those laws. And the ICE agents, love them or hate them, they are enforcing laws that are written on our books by elected officials. We have got to start at grassroots campaigns to elect officials who recognize the human rights of all people. So that's where I would start. That's my stance on TD7G. And DACA, if we reform the system the way we need to do it in a revolutionary way, DACA wouldn't be necessary anymore. But for now, of course, I support keeping DACA in place. Families shouldn't be separated because of a piece of paper. I believe Samantha had a question?
About your immigration, so for the people who are waiting in line, like they're trying to come into the country legally and they put their papers in, trying to get their green cards, and they are pushed back.
Mhm.
Like I have family, most of my family does not live in the United States, so I have family who are still waiting to get their green cards.
Right.
They cannot enter the countries.
Mhm.
But you're proposing that people who come here illegally would just have to pay a fine and then they
Mhm.
can eventually be, they can eventually become a citizen. So
That's
what
true.
would happen to the people who are trying to do it the correct way and
Mhm.
they are not able to because they are pushed back because of people who are coming in illegally?
That's true. It's a contradiction because her question was, what about the people waiting to do this the right way, the legal way? Wouldn't that seem unjust to the people in other countries waiting to get in? The catch to this situation is human rights. There are people who have been here 20 years, and at one point they were documented, but because they missed a letter on their form, or because the office could have even lost their form. I've heard of that happening. They became undocumented, but it's too late. They have children here. The rest of their family are American citizens. So I think that's a human rights violation. That if you are here and established and you've shown that you're no threat to our society at all, I believe that they should be given a chance simply because, for one thing, our laws have been broken for a while. For another thing, there are jobs right here in Georgia. There are farmers who are losing millions of dollars. We're talking in the hundreds of millions total. Over $400 million were lost in 2010 because of our immigration policy here in Georgia. Because there are blueberries rotting on the branch, there are vegetables, there's food rotting on the vines because we're afraid of other people. So I believe that, and there are 75,000 people last year, in the spring of this year, in Mexico City, applying for a worker's visa to be a migrant laborer. And I believe that we're the city on the hill. I think that if we have a need for those jobs here, we should allow people in. If we can't fill them with American workers, and if there's a need for that, then we should let people in so that those farmers won't lose their money. Not only that, we always talk about how we value hard work in America. The hardest working people in the world are working on the farms and building our buildings, and they would make great Americans. So if people are willing to come here and work hard and do it the right way like that, I think that we should make sure that we're not losing money and that there's mutual benefits on both sides. That's only rational. But I can't do anything about some situations in other countries. Simply because we saw in Europe, there's a catch to this. If you allow everybody to come in, if we have completely open borders, even our own economy couldn't sustain it. So I don't think that we should allow so many people in that they really do compete with American workers. But I do believe that we should allow enough people in to fill jobs here that are not being filled by American workers. It's only a rational, moderate way to do it, I believe. But there's a contradiction there, and I see how those people would feel. Yes, Will.
So I believe one of the biggest problems with both the Affordable Care Act and all the new iterations of the Health Care Act now, and no one's talking about, is the insurance providers. I know that you talk a lot about universal health care and single payer, but do you believe that, would you be in favor of taking small steps towards that? And if so, how would you keep private insurance providers accountable? Because that is clearly something that no one is doing.
That would be tough to do because in an industry like this, often those private insurance end up billing Medicaid, Medicare. They often end up, I don't want to use language that's too strong. They often end up draining money from public funds, from hospitals, from Medicaid. I think that health insurance, sure, there's a way for them to find a different line of work if they need to. I think we need to have a responsive labor department that helps people like coal miners. If there's an industry, we shouldn't, in the 1930s, 1940s, there were typewriters people who worked on typewriters, who had jobs. And whenever they invented computers and printers, many people said we shouldn't allow that to happen because then those people will be out of a job. I believe that our labor department needs to be more responsive to help direct people to the jobs of the future. But I don't believe that we should maintain an industry simply because there are people who work there. They can find other jobs. What is told to people at the bottom of the chain when they get fired or laid off? They're told, you don't like your situation? Go get a job. Now, I wouldn't say that to the private health insurance workers laid off. I would rather have a system in place that would help train them for a different job. The same for the coal miners. All across, there's going to be recessions, and every time there's a recession, we act surprised. And we were not ready to actually prepare the workers for the emerging jobs that will come when the recession leaves. So I think that we can help those private health insurance workers if necessary, because I know that they're not all executives. Many people sell it. So if we offer those opportunities, I believe that would be fair to everybody. And again, this is a matter of life and death. This is not another issue. This is not how well cars are made or what cell phone sizes are. This is pain, mental anguish, life and death. So I think that the stakes are too high to preserve that industry for the sake of preserving the industry. Yes?
I have two questions about education. So one is your level of support for public education, and the other is for cost of higher education, how to try to address.
Thank you. Yes, the federal government's role in education, now most of it is state funded. Only 3% of the federal budget is invested in public education, surprisingly. But I believe we should expand it. We should go with the way the tax funding works is that if you live in a wealthy area, you have small class sizes and better teachers. I believe the federal government should work on equalizing class sizes in every single area in the country. The states would be the same, still be the basic funders of their local schools, but for poor districts like some places in Gwinnett, some places in South Georgia, I believe the federal government should help out to give them the same educational opportunity people in nice areas have. I think we need to stop punishing schools for working in tough districts. So we should end federally mandated standardized testing tomorrow. That would be one of the first things I would introduce, ending federally mandated standardized testing. It dumbs down education for the people who want to go to college, and for the rest of the people who don't want to go to college, it makes it a college or bust prospect. So actually use the federal budget to help education in this country. And education investment, we know, pays off. It won't pay off next quarter, but it pays off not just in human terms, but also in economic terms. So I'm fully in support of public education, and part of my platform is expanding college education. I just had a new idea the other day. The great thing about being on this campaign is having these ideas. So Bernie Sanders had an idea of taxing, making a fee for on Wall Street transactions and helping offer free college to everybody. I have a different take. I would still use that same transaction fee, but instead of offering free college to everybody, I would have two options. There are plenty of people in this country who can afford college, and they would prefer to go to college right after high school. For them, go ahead and pay for college. But for either of those people, or for those who couldn't afford college education, I would offer a universal GI Bill, sort of. So, but instead of having to serve in the military, which is not for everybody, I would revive the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, so that every American student after high school could have real life experience before they get to college. They could mature more. I believe retention rates would be higher and dropout rates would be lower. It would give them a chance to earn, to have some buy-in on their education. Because I do believe that if everybody got a free education offered to them up front, I believe there'd be a lot of money wasted. I believe that people would find it's not for them, they'd be an English major for a year, and there'd be a lot of money wasted on the system. I think everybody does need to have some level of buy-in. And there's so many things we can do in this country with a revived Civilian Conservation Corps. Planting trees to repair destroyed forests in Appalachia, which would help reduce the levels of climate change. We could work on levees, and we know that that's coming, right? Another example where climate change is an opportunity and not a threat. So but in this case, I would do something a little bit different from FDR. This would not just be for the rural areas. I also think there's something to be said for urban conservation. go into the worst, most crime-ridden areas of the cities and build gyms, libraries, after-school activity centers, medical centers, programs for people after school, and let people work in those programs and help build up their community. It would raise real estate prices, it would stabilize their communities, it would do so much, and it would be much cheaper than what we pay right now for people who can't find jobs. We already pay a lot of people to not work already. They're on welfare, they're getting food stamps. I believe people who can't work because they're young or disabled or elderly, they shouldn't get those food stamps. But people who can work and want to, why not give them an opportunity to earn a technical or college education? That's also, by the way, I'm hoping that a few of these ideas are new, and I'm hoping you guys look these up to see if there are any other politicians offering these. Yes?
So I guess this is an invite more than a question.
Okay.
But we work with a lot of student leaders here on the campus, and I just wanted to say that we also try a lot to kind of bridge the gap between across political aisles.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to invite you and say if you wanted me to during the fall, I could definitely set up some events, whether they be hosted or co-hosted
Sure.
by clubs of different political sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, I'd love to, and really, I'm looking forward to talking to people who don't agree with me. I keep talking
We got plenty of them.
You do have some, okay.
Yeah.
I know I work with plenty of people who do that, who don't agree with me, but at work I leave my politics behind. So I hope I'm not keeping you guys too late. I don't want you to feel like you have to stay the whole time. I want to answer every question to everybody who has a question. And I enjoy this, but I do realize that some people may not. So I'm here to answer any question.
About education policies, what do you think the government is doing now to help the high school graduates and people in college to have real world experience while they're in school as well?
There are some programs. There's the work study program. I don't think it does enough. I think a really useful part of an expanded vocational technical investment would be to partner local businesses with the high school, and they shouldn't be getting free labor, of course, but training they might trade for their labor. I think that they should that it would be, we could give them a nice tax break on wages paid to those students, and they could get training. And what students really need is not just knowing how to do something, but how to work with people in the community they want to work in. And often you do end up working close to the community where you go to school. So that could be the high school, or it could be at the college, but I think there should be a liaison program between educational institutions and the real world, as they call it. But I don't think the government is doing nearly enough now. The Labor Department, which we have, it's sitting there, but it's like the State Department. It's being decimated and it's not doing much. We're paying for it not to really do as much as it should be doing. Yes?
Two issues that our political outreach committee is working on is campus carry and gentrification in Gainesville and surrounding areas. And I know that neither of these issues at this time are really part of Congress's concern, but I did want to know your ideas on both of them.
Yeah. So in terms of housing, I do believe that is one of, again, what makes us human makes us equal. I don't know why we can't, in the richest country in the world, make sure that everybody, no matter how poor you are, you have a roof over your head. They've done this in Utah. They've saved a lot of money. Listen, I'm sorry to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but we actually have socialism in this country right now. I don't know if you guys realize this. It's a very perverse and grotesque form of socialism. There are two places where you can get guaranteed housing, guaranteed health care, and food, and even education. You either have to be in Congress in Washington, or you have to go to jail. And our prison population, once again, is the biggest in the world. Many of them are homeless. Many homeless people actually go to jail on purpose because that's the only place they can go. And in California, by the way, if you're in jail for a year, it's actually cheap. It's actually more expensive to be there in that jail for the year than it is to be at Harvard for a year. So it would be much, much cheaper to make sure that people who are homeless, many of whom are veterans, I can't believe we even have a veteran homeless workforce. I can't believe that we allow it to happen. But it's cheaper to make sure people are housed decently. So I think that is a right. up there with medical care. If you don't have shelter, you don't have, I've worked with students who have been homeless before, and I can't imagine, most homelessness, by the way, is periodic. My wife and I and our family work with homeless people. It's through a program called Family Promise. Oddly enough, it's harder for people who are homeless as a family to find shelter than it is if you don't have a family. Because most shelters will not allow wives, husbands, spouses, and children in. It's harder, so they live out of their cars. So housing, decent, affordable housing should be all right. When it comes to guns, now this is, two causes that will be at the top of this ticket are going to be pro-life and guns. So first of all, I'm clearly pro-life. My healthcare plan would save many lives every day in this country. And when it comes to guns, I do believe that the policies in New York City cannot be the same as the policies in Franklin County, Georgia. It's crazy. I think the Democrats' approach to gun policy has been wrong-headed, because I don't think that banning a particular weapon makes sense. An assault rifle can kill a lot of people, but the Virginia Tech shooter used a Glock. So I don't think that we can go after certain weapons. It wouldn't be effective, not only number one, which is the most important thing, but number two, it's politically really terrible, because we show that we don't understand guns when we do that, and you don't want to let people legislating that they don't understand guns. But I do understand one thing. I don't think that it should be right for a person to sell a gun to someone who they have not checked to make sure they're not violent. That should be a basic responsibility of anybody selling a gun, that you have checked to make sure this is not a violent person with a criminal record. Right now, I could, with any kind of record, I could go to a local gun dealer or a gun show, wait until the gun show's over, I could go outside and buy a gun, any kind I wanted to. Most of the people who have committed mass shootings started out as domestic abusers. They start out being violent in their home, where they're comfortable, and then they go out and be violent in the middle of the public square. I believe it should be a crime to sell a gun to a person with a history of domestic abuse, because violent people should not have those guns. And that's the best way we could actually control that. So that's my stance on guns. As for campuses and institutions and cities who make their own laws, I think that gun owners should respect those. There has to be a give and take. In the Second Amendment, it actually starts off with regulation, and then it talks about gun rights. And so I believe there should be a healthy balance of both. I own a gun myself. I grew up around guns. I'm not afraid of them, but I also don't want to sit in the middle of a theater and wonder if somebody's going to come in and shoot me. And I don't want to have to be ready at all times to be Clint Eastwood. I imagine myself being one when I was young, but there's a theater full of people there, and you can't be Clint Eastwood. So we just need sane, rational gun policies that are constitutional. Yes?
Can you explain what you mean when you say you're pro-life?
Pro-life, yes, thank you. That's my wife, Jennifer, by the way. She's my best friend. There is no such thing as a person who is not pro-life. I've never met a person in my life who is not pro-life. Now, we are forced into a false choice these days. You're either pro-life or you're pro-choice. But that is a very false choice. Number one, Representative Collins, who says he's pro-life, voted to cut Medicaid by a total of around $1.1 trillion in the course of 2 bills. Over half of all births last year in Georgia were funded by Medicaid. That doesn't sound like it's pro-life to me. I believe we can both cut down on abortion rates and preserve women's rights. There is no need to have to choose between those two. If you can't choose what you do with your own body, you are not free. And you do not stop becoming a human being when you become pregnant. So I believe that women deserve human rights, self-determination over what to do with their own bodies, and that includes access to contraception, which we know in Colorado and Texas cuts down on abortion rates dramatically. There are very, very few abortions when there are fewer unwanted pregnancies. So women, by the way, are free fundamentally. Human beings are born free. I'm a teacher, I know this. I can tell kids what to do all day, but unless I get them to choose to do it, they find ways around it. But women are also born free. And if you take their right over their body away from them, it's very dangerous, because they will assert their right over their own body. And it may be with a coat hanger. It may be with suicide. But it is not pro-life to strip women of their personal human rights. It is pro-life though. We don't talk a lot about women who lose wanted pregnancies because they don't have health care, do we? That is also technically an abortion. So we would save so many unborn children every year, many more unborn children than we would save by outlawing abortion. In Texas, by the way, teenage abortions have skyrocketed since they defunded Planned Parenthood. Because that's, of course, what happens when you take away women's right to self-determination. So, that's my view on pro-life. I am pro-life, and I'm in favor of human rights for women. Everybody's looking pretty tired. Does anybody have a last question? And people are starting to bail, too. So either the ship is sinking or it's late. So, would anybody like to ask more questions? I'm here all night, but if you guys are getting tired, yes.
How do you feel about pineapple on pizza?
I mean, it shouldn't be criminalized. I just wouldn't want to associate with anybody. No, I'm just joking. I have people in my own family. Sorry, this touches my family too. I have people in my family who eat pineapple on pizza, and we've worked through it, but it's still a problem.
There is no uncharted territory.
Anyway, thank you guys so much. The questions were challenging, and you guys are troopers for sitting through all this. I'm willing to stay after because I know there are a lot of journalism majors here or people taking the class. So I can stay after and answer any questions you have in private if you want to do an interview. Have a good night, and I've got to get ready to teach later civilizations tomorrow. Roman Greece is where I'm going tomorrow. So I work during the day, by the way. I'm teaching summer school, so I got to get home and get ready for that. But I'm willing to stay after and talk to anybody who wants to stay. Thank you.